I'm Cynthia James, and this network is about changing lives one woman at a time. Welcome to Women Awakening. I'm your host, Cynthia James, and I am so excited because I get to come to you and I get to introduce you to extraordinary women that are change makers, that are making a difference in the world. I believe that it's our time to emerge on the planet as women, and that by meeting other women that are way showers, it just lets us know that there are infinite possibilities. And so I hope you will subscribe. You can find us on Spotify and iHeart and iTunes and YouTube. We're in a lot of places. Join the community and meet extraordinary women. So today, my guest is someone new in my life. Her name is Judi Miller, and she started her career as a certified public accountant, and then she excelled in the world of finances. But today, she is working with spiritual visionaries and is trained in ancestral and energy clearing. And her journey has brought her to numerous lessons around the nature of the Creator, forgiveness, and the trajectory each soul follows. Her book is called Perfect, A Path of Love, Forgiveness, and Transformation. Oh, Judi, welcome. I am so glad that you are here.
It's great to be here. It's such an honor, Cynthia. Thank you.
So I want to just start at the beginning, because I want women to know that successful women aren't just born with this silver spoon in their mouth, that they just drop into success, that there's a journey. So tell us a little bit about how you grew up and what kind of childhood you had.
Sure, I'd love to. So I was actually born in Trinidad. For people who don't know where Trinidad is, it's actually an island in the Caribbean. And I moved to the US when I was very young. And Cynthia, I never felt like I fit in. It's not about race or discrimination. I just didn't look like other people. And I was also from a mixed heritage. So no one ever accepted me as part of them or part of their group. And what I realized on this journey was that our outer experiences and our outer life is just a reflection of what we hold inside of us. So because I felt different, I made myself different. So Cynthia, have you ever been afraid?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Well, so thank you so much for being so honest. So as I look back on my life, I realized that I lived most of my life from a state of fear. I was afraid of not fitting in, not being enough, being different. And I also had this unexplainable fear of being sexually assaulted. I had never been assaulted. And as a child, I could sense and feel different spirits and energies around me. So as a child, this was extremely confusing. And this continued for most of my adult life. So I started my career as a CPA, as you mentioned, and then I went into work in the world of finance. So here I was living this very traditional lifestyle, but then coming home at night, terrified of the things that I couldn't understand.
Wow. Well, first of all, I've been to Trinidad, and it's a beautiful island, and I just want to just acknowledge that what you were saying about not belonging. There are so many of us on this planet who have why am I here? I don't fit. So I totally get that, and I would like to know, what was the journey to finding out what those fears were attached to that made no sense to you.
Oh, I'd love to share that, but I would love to comment on something that you said. So much of my story is about letting go of the stories, the labels, and judgments that don't serve us. So for most of my life, I felt like I was nothing. No matter what I did, I felt like I was nothing. But I realized that in the nothingness, we could actually be anything that we want. So without those stories, labels, and judgments, we could truly emerge as our true and authentic self. So I just wanted to address that because you brought it up. But in terms of what I discovered was several years ago, I had a hysterectomy and I found a healer to help me heal from my surgery. But we continued to work together to explore this unexplainable fear that I had of the night. And what we learned, Cynthia, is that a lot of the fears that we have are not even our own. The science of epigenetics shows us that we could actually inherit the pain and the trauma from our parents and our ancestors. They've actually shown with Holocaust survivors, the pain and the terror that they experience could actually be passed down to their children and their grandchildren. So that fear that I felt every night, that fear that I felt of being sexually assaulted, what we found out wasn't actually my own. It was actually a cellular memory from the pain and the trauma that my mother went through when she was a 12-year-old child and when she was attacked. They say every female baby is born with 2 to 3 million of their reproductive eggs at birth. So for most of your mother's young childhood, as well as her adulthood, you were actually in there as an unborn egg. So on an energetic level, you actually experienced all of her triumphs as well as her traumas. And that's what it was for me. But Cynthia, my story does not end there. There's actually a shocking connection to that very healer that I trusted to heal me in this lifetime. And in that moment of revelation, I could have felt fear, I could have felt anger, I could have felt betrayal, but I didn't. What I saw was the ultimate perfection of the universe. I saw how all of our souls are actually interconnected across lifetimes and how we can truly never get it wrong. We're always given that opportunity to heal.
Oh, okay. There's so much about what you said that is just, I'm just going, whoa, this is exciting. So first thing is, I come from 5 generations of women who were abused and traumatized, and I could see generation after generation how that encoding you're talking about existed. And I was going through the same thing myself. And all of a sudden I said, what if I can change this trajectory? What if I can do it differently? So that's the first part. The second part is like, I believe we have soul contracts, and I believe that we have soul contracts with others. And sometimes they are extraordinarily loving, wonderful gifts, and other times they're great teachers that are here to help us move to the next level. So I just want to know, though, how were you conscious enough to understand that this was not a betrayal moment, but a growth opportunity?
So throughout that experience, what I was doing was actually learning to open my heart. And as I opened my heart more and more miracles actually came in. And I view life as a project. And when we view life as a project, we don't take things so personally. We can actually step back and actually see the gift in every moment.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you and I talked, you had seen my TED talk, and I would not wish my childhood on anyone, but it has definitely informed who I am today and the work that I do today. And so I want to know what you're doing in this moment. I mean, I want to talk about your book, but what are you doing in this moment? How are you in service to humanity?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, you mentioned that I was in finance and a CPA for so much of my life. But when I went through this experience, I looked out into the world and realized that there's so many people who feel like they're not enough, that they're different, that they're not worthy. But none of that is true. We're all born worthy. We can truly never get it wrong. And, when you have that experience, you just want to share it with everyone that you possibly can. So I actually left the world of finance about a year or two ago. And my mission has really just been to share the story with as many people as possible.
Awesome. Okay, so where'd the book come from? how did this book get birthed?
So it was just, I went through so many experiences that it almost sounds like near-death experiences that I went through, but I was actually dying with my eyes wide open. And I just felt this call and this mission to write this book. So as a CPA, they say most accountants don't know how to write because we're so analytical and we're so into the numbers. But I truly felt that the experiences that I had were truly a blessing. Then a lot of the writing was truly channeled.
Yeah. So perfect, I'm assuming, means that everything is perfect. Everything is in alignment.
Everything is here to serve us. And Cynthia, a lot of people can't feel that. They feel contracted with just the word perfect. And, it's interesting. I believe, and, I told you, I loved your TEDx talk because so much of it resonated with me. I believe the stories that we create in our mind are not always true.
Right.
But our bodies tell the truth.
Yes, Absolutely. So the three things in tagline are love, forgiveness, and transformation. Why those three topics?
So forgiveness, I chose forgiveness, and there's so many different definitions of forgiveness.
Mhm.
But for me, forgiveness is really simple. It just means to forego or to let go of. So painful and unwanted events are going to happen to all of us. We could literally experience it once, or we could play it over and over in our minds until it becomes our story, it becomes our identity. So for me, forgiveness is truly just letting go of those contracted stories and energies so we can move forward and experience happiness. It's not about condoning the actions of another person. And there's a famous quote, and it's often credited to Nelson Mandela. Resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So that's exactly what unforgiveness is to me.
Yeah. And so, you don't become a teacher like you are without having to practice. And so I'm wondering, in your personal life, where have you had where have you had to practice forgiveness, so that the truth of what you know has become your reality?
So the biggest forgiveness is really that connection to the healer. So I've had to practice forgiveness all of my life, and I think many people do as well. But the big revelation was with that healer, realizing that the past life connection that she had to my family, she was actually the person, the previous soul. And I know my story sounds a little unusual and a little uncommon, but she was the soul that actually inflicted the pain on my family.
Mm.
And to actually see how we're giving a choice to come back and to heal is so beautiful, that I saw the love in that situation.
Well, yes, and how prepared your soul was to have that experience and to have your own healing, and really, to heal the generations of the abuse that happened by your transformation and your transcendence. I just think that that's beautiful, and I want to say that your story doesn't sound different to me. I mean, I have done many past life regressions and things like that to really for me, whether you believe in past life or not, what I think it did for me was that I got to see where past lives were informing what I was to learn this time, what I was
Mm.
learn and how I was to grow. And so I want to talk about opening the heart. And so, is that just generic for you in terms of humanity, or has it been a deep personal experience of learning to love?
It's interesting how I learned to love. And I just wanted to comment just very quickly. You talked about your generations of abuse in your family. Many indigenous cultures believe that when we heal, we actually heal 7 generations back and 7 generations forward. So we're not just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for our ancestors and all those who come after us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the process of opening my heart, I actually discovered quite by accident. So I used to go to this healer every week, and I'd be on her healing table literally for 45 minutes with nothing to do, with my eyes closed. And I just by chance started to imagine all of the people and situations in my life that I loved. And it was going up, it was going beyond just imagination. I was feeling it, I was experiencing it. And I would just bring in scene after scene. I'd bring in the first time I held my children in my hands, or the first sunset, or my dog who thinks he's a cat. And literally just experiencing that just opened my heart more and more. But what I realized, Cynthia, it wasn't dependent on anyone or anything. I could create that sense of love in any moment and any time. And that practice just literally opens my heart.
Well, that is so beautiful. I can practice love at any time and any moment. That's exquisite. So I want, how many children do you have?
I have two.
Yes. And what do you think has been the greatest gift that you've given them?
Hmm. Is living what I've learned and just
Mm.
being that role model for them. I learned in the experience truly how unconditionally loved and accepted that we are. And I mentioned before that we're already born worthy, we're already born perfect, but so many of us struggle because we're always trying to prove ourselves, to trying to prove our worth. And just by loving my children unconditionally in every moment, they see and they experience that on a human level as well.
Yeah, many people say that, children do what they see, not what you say. And so you're a living example of love and forgiveness in action. And so they get to experience that. And I think it's beautiful. I guess I when you go out into the world and you speak to people and you work with visionaries and things, um, I know you're telling them that they're worthy and that they're important, but what do you invite them into when you're working with them?
Sure. So I like to use an acronym called NEST, NEST, like a bird's nest. And
Uh-huh.
the N stands for notice, to actually notice our thoughts. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. 95% of them are actually the same ones we had yesterday and the day before. And 80% of them are negative. And as humans, we're hardwired because thousands of years ago, it was critical for our survival to notice and to remember the negative aspects of a situation. But we don't live in that environment anymore. And so many of us are on autopilot. There's a space, a gap between stimulus and response, and we get to choose. So I invite people first to notice their thoughts and flick it off before it truly becomes ingrained. So that's the N. The E is to truly experience the sensations and emotions in our bodies and then let them go. So Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor wrote a book called My Stroke of Insight, and she was a very famous Harvard neuroscientist who was able to heal herself from traumatic brain injury. But what I got from her book was the 90-second rule. When an event happens, either good or bad, it literally only takes us 90 seconds to process and experience that event in our body and then let it go. After the 90 seconds, it's up to us. We can truly let it go, or we can start to create a story, right? So I invite people to actually experience the sensations in their body because, again, I believe the body tells the truth. The S stands for scratch the record. And many of us heard these, cancel, cancel. My cancel word is squash. Whenever a
Mhm.
negative thought comes, I squash it. But the one that really resonates for me, I learned from Tony Robbins years ago, and I call it zany crazy thing. It's to disrupt that pattern in such a way that you can't repeat it. So when my husband and I get into an argument, and I know, Cynthia, you've never gotten into an argument where you had to prove your point, we agreed in advance that one of us would reach over and grab the other one by the nose. So, of course, we start laughing because it's just so crazy and so stupid, but it disrupts our cycle of repeating that same pattern over and over. So I invite people to come up with a zany or crazy thing that they're going to do before they start repeating that pattern that they know that they have. And then the last one is T, tender love and care. I feel that so many of us feel unloved, unlovable, disconnected because we've abandoned ourselves. We've abandoned the creator of our understanding, the God of our understanding, but we've also abandoned ourselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. And again, I love your TEDx talk because you talked about this radical self-love. And so many of us have forgotten to love ourselves. And it's not arrogant because when we love ourselves more deeply, we have more love to share with others. So when I work with people, we go through these various cycles so they can incorporate it into their own lives.
I love it. Well, I tell all of my clients that the body has a language, and when you learn the language, you get to do extraordinary things. So I love Nest.
And Cynthia, our body is an infinitely intelligent blueprint. The different traumas and the stories that we hold actually get attached to certain parts of the body. So you're absolutely correct.
It's very cool. All right. So before I ask you my last question, how do people find you? How do they find your book and connect to your work?
The easiest way is to go to my website. My name is spelled a little different. So it's Judi, Judi Miller, MILLER.net. My social media handles are there, my blog posts, my podcasts, it's all there. And Cynthia, I have a free ebook, especially for your listeners. It's called Awaken the Creator Within, totally free, and they can find it on my website.
Awesome. Okay, ladies, I hope you wrote that down, judymiller.net. Okay. This is great. So here's the last question. I ask the same question of every guest. What is the one thing you want women to know about the importance of their awakening?
Hmm. So, much of my story is about letting go of the stories, right? So I believe when we let go of the stories, the labels, and the judgments, we see everything through the eyes of the Creator. We see everything through the eyes of love, where there is no separation, Cynthia.
Oh, that is so beautiful. Well, Judi, I am so honored to know you, to connect with you, to share your wisdom with the women. Thank you so much for being here. It's exciting to hear and see what you're doing.
It's been truly a blessing. Thank you so much.
So, ladies, we do this every week. Come back and meet another extraordinary woman. Because what I want you to know is that they are examples, that, they're not exceptions. They're showing you what's possible. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to connecting with you next time. You're loved, you're important, you're magnificent, you're powerful, you're extraordinary. Many blessings.